The grand hall of Clerion Prime stretched like a cavern of steel and crystal, glittering with the wealth of empires that had gathered beneath its dome. Thousands of noble guests filled the tiers, their jeweled robes swishing as they whispered to one another. Banners of alien houses floated in holographic fire above their seats, displaying the colors of 100 species. This was not an ordinary gathering. Today was an auction unlike any other. At the very center of the hall, under the pale blue glow of psionic chains, stood the one prize everyone had come to see, Princess Velora of the Drakiri. The Drakiri were known across the stars as warrior kings, rulers of flame and steel. Their bloodline stretched back before the founding of the Thousand Suns Empire. But now their dynasty was broken, their armies scattered, and their proud princess captured. And so she stood, tall and unbowed, her silver scales shining faintly in the cold light. Her long black hair framed a face that was both fierce and beautiful, though her expression was carved from stone. Her golden eyes moved slowly across the crowd, sharp and full of contempt. She would not lower her head, even as chains of living energy wrapped around her wrists and ankles. The auctioneer, a thin alien with insect-like limbs and a smooth, polished voice, raised his hands for silence. "Honored guests of the Thousand Suns," he said, his words echoing through translation devices. "Before you stands the last heir of the Drakiri throne, warrior of 100 battles, master of blade and fire, Princess Velora herself. The bidding begins now at 1 million credits." A hush fell over the hall. The number was nothing to these nobles. They had spent more than that on their personal fleets, and yet no hand rose. The auctioneer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Surely, honored lords and ladies, you know the value of such a warrior. She is unmatched in combat, trained in every art of war, and her bloodline carries secrets of flamecraft lost to time. Who will begin the bidding?" Still, silence. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some nobles leaned close to their neighbors, their voices low but sharp. "Do you not know the curse?" hissed a scaled merchant. "Every who has tried to bind her met ruin. Fleets burned, houses fell. Better to waste your credits on dust than claim her," murmured a cloaked dignitary. The auctioneer's voice grew tighter. "Come now, surely her reputation does not frighten you. You are lords of the Empire, masters of worlds, but the nobles avoided his eyes. Some smirked, others looked down at their jeweled goblets. None dared raise a hand. Princess Velora stood unmoving, though her chest rose and fell slowly. She had heard these whispers before. The curse of the Drakiri princess, spun by cowards, magnified by her enemies. They said no one could claim her without disaster. They said her spirit burned too fiercely, that she brought ruin to all who tried to chain her. Let them believe it, she thought. Better to be feared than pitied. The minutes stretched. The hall, once filled with murmurs and anticipation, now rang with an awkward quiet. The auctioneer cleared his throat, his wings trembling. 1 million credits. Once, twice. Not a single bid. For the first time in her life, Velora felt the sting of humiliation deeper than battle wounds. She had faced fleets and monsters without flinching. But standing unclaimed on that stage, rejected like unwanted cargo, gnawed at her pride. She almost welcomed it when laughter finally broke the silence. From the farthest section of the hall, a hand rose. Not a claw, not a talon, not a jeweled digit encased in armor. A human hand, flesh and bone, simple, unadorned. The laughter rolled across the amphitheater like thunder. "A human?" roared a horned noble, slamming his goblet against the railing. "From the dirt worlds," sneered another, her scaled lips curling. "Insolence," shouted a third, his multiple eyes glimmering with mockery. But the auctioneer froze, mandibles clicking in surprise. "A bid has been made." All eyes turned to the section where the human stood. He was not dressed in jewels or robes. His suit was plain, travel-worn though well kept. His dark hair fell loosely over his brow, and his face was steady, almost calm, as if he had not just shaken the hall with a single gesture. His gaze did not waver, even as hundreds of alien lords stared at him with ridicule. The human's voice carried across the chamber, firm and clear. 1 million credits. "I bid," the crowd erupted. Some jeered, others howled with laughter. "Does he even have the credits?" One noble scoffed. "Do humans even know what credits are?" Another mocked. The auctioneer lifted his hand, commanding silence. His voice was strained now, but he could not ignore the rules of the hall. "The bid is accepted. 1 million credits from the human." For the first time that day, Princess Valora's golden eyes widened. She studied the man across the hall. He was no warlord, no crowned emperor, no merchant prince, just human. And yet in that moment she felt something stir in her chest. Not pity, not mockery, hope. She did not lower her head. She did not allow herself to show weakness before these vultures. But her eyes locked on his, and for a breath of time she wondered, why? Why would a human, out of all the species in the thousand suns, dare to raise his hand? The nobles scoffed. The auctioneer hesitated, still hoping for another bidder to break the tension. But no one else dared, and so, with the sound of his trembling mandibles, he declared, 1,000,000 credits sold. To the human. The chains around Valora flickered as the guards prepared to hand her over. The hall filled with murmurs again. Mockery, disbelief, even a little fear. But in the center of it all, one human stood tall, unshaken by their scorn. And the cursed warrior princess watched him, her pride warring with curiosity. For in a galaxy where everyone else had feared her, rejected her, and turned away, only one dared to raise his hand. The great hall was still buzzing with voices as the auction ended. Nobles leaned over railings, whispering to each other, unable to hide their amusement. The idea of a human, one of the weakest species in the galaxy, claiming the Drakiri princess was absurd to them. Guards moved quickly, their armor clattering as they unlocked the glowing chains that bound Valora. The psionic energy faded with a sharp crack, leaving faint burns on her wrists. She did not flinch. She only straightened her back, lifting her chin with the dignity of a queen, not a prisoner. The human stood waiting at the edge of the platform. His dark coat looked out of place among the rich fabrics and armored uniforms of alien nobles. Yet he did not shrink under their stares. His calmness made him seem taller than he was. The auctioneer's voice trembled as he spoke. According to the rules of the Thousand Suns, the prize belongs to the highest bidder. Human, state your name for the record. The man's voice was steady, carrying across the chamber. Daniel Hayes. From Earth. The name sounded strange in that vast hall. Many nobles laughed at the simplicity of it. Some had titles that stretched across 20 words, decorated with stars, bloodlines, and victories. But this man gave only 2 short syllables. Daniel Hayes. Valora's golden eyes never left him. She measured him the way she would an enemy commander, studying posture, voice, and the hidden strength behind his calm face. What she saw puzzled her. He was no warrior she could recognize. No scars on his hands, no medals on his coat. And yet there was something solid in the way he stood. The guards handed her over. 2 of them stepped back quickly, as if fearing her curse might leap onto them. Chains gone, she could have attacked, but the hall was filled with weapons and soldiers. She had no intention of being cut down in a display for the nobles. Instead, she stepped toward the human. Her movements were slow, controlled like a predator circling prey. When she stopped before him, she tilted her head slightly. You, she said, her voice low but sharp. Why? Daniel met her gaze without fear. Because no one else would. That answer struck her like a blade and left her silent for a moment. Around them, nobles chuckled. To them, it was the response of a fool. To her, it was something different, something she could not yet name. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Transaction complete. Guards escort them out. As the 2 walked down the steps of the platform, the nobles shouted taunts. Enjoy your curse, human. Tell us when your little dirt world collapses under her shadow. Perhaps the human thinks himself a hero from his planet's fables. Daniel ignored them. His steps were steady and he did not look back. Valora followed beside him, her face calm though her mind was burning with questions. They were taken to a private docking bay. The hall's noise faded behind them, replaced by the hum of engines and the hiss of fueling lines. Daniel's ship was waiting, smaller than the massive vessels of the nobles but sleek and functional. Its hull bore the marks of travel, scratches, burns, and patched repairs. A single pilot droid rolled forward, scanning Valora with a cautious beep before retreating to the ship. The guards gave a final warning. She is yours, human. But remember, if the curse touches your world, none will help you. Daniel gave no reply. He simply guided Valora up the ramp. Inside, the ship was modest. The corridor lights were soft. The air smelled faintly of metal and recycled oxygen. It was not a palace, not even close, yet it felt alive, unlike the cold halls of empires. Valora crossed her arms. So a human dares to claim me. Do you seek power, wealth, or do you believe you can tame the curse? Daniel shook his head. I don't believe in curses. She studied him carefully. Then you are a fool. Entire fleets have fallen because of me. Maybe they fell because they thought of you as property, Daniel said, not as a person. Her eyes narrowed. His words were too calm, too simple. No one had spoken to her like that since the fall of her people. He walked to the control deck, motioning for her to follow. The ship's windows stretched wide, showing the black sea of stars outside. As they lifted from the bay, Velora felt the engines rumble beneath her feet. Freedom, even if temporary. You risk much, she said, her tone softer now. Your kind is not known in these halls. Why did you come to Clerion Prime at all? Daniel glanced at the stars. Humans don't have much of a place in this empire. They see us as weak, backward. But sometimes weakness is an advantage. No one looks at us twice. He turned to face her fully. I saw you standing there. Everyone was afraid. Not of you, but of what they believed about you. I thought, maybe they're wrong. Maybe someone just needs to give you a chance. For a moment, silence hung between them. Velora's golden eyes searched his face, hunting for any sign of lies. She found none. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. You are either the bravest man I have met, or the most reckless, Daniel shrugged. Sometimes it's the same thing. Hours passed as the ship left Clerion Prime behind. The stars stretched into lines as they entered faster than light travel. Velora sat in the co-pilot's chair, her posture still regal even in a simple seat. She watched Daniel work, his hands steady on the controls, his eyes scanning readouts with practiced ease. He was no warrior of flame, no prince of fleets, yet he handled his vessel with quiet skill, as though the stars themselves obeyed his calm. At last she spoke again. Do you understand what you have done? By claiming me, you have tied your fate to mine. If the curse is real, your world will suffer. Your people will suffer. Daniel didn't look away from the stars. Then we'll face it together. Her chest tightened. Not from fear. From something she had not felt in a long time. Respect. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. The chains were gone, but the weight of humiliation remained. Yet strangely, beside this human, that weight felt a little lighter. Perhaps the curse was not in her blood. Perhaps it was in the fear of others. And perhaps this human, in his strange calmness, would be the first not to break beneath it. By the time the ship entered deep space, the laughter of the nobles was far behind them. Velora opened her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, one human dares to raise his hand. Perhaps that is enough. Daniel glanced at her but said nothing. He only set the course forward into the unknown stars. The ship glided through the endless dark, engines humming steadily as stars streaked into long white lines. Princess Velora sat in silence, her golden eyes fixed on the view outside. Space was a vast ocean, and she had once commanded fleets that ruled it. Now she rode in the small vessel of a human stranger, her fate tied to him by a single raised hand. Daniel sat at the controls, his posture calm as always. He checked the readings with practiced ease. The ship was not grand, but it was reliable. Every button and lever bore the marks of use, showing years of travel. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy but not hostile. Finally, Velora broke it. You steer your ship well, she said slowly. Daniel gave a small smile. Thank you. It's kept me alive this long. Her eyes studied him again. He was no soldier of the Empire, no prince of wealth, yet he carried himself with quiet strength. You are human, she said. Your kind is not known for walking into halls of power. Why were you there? Daniel leaned back slightly, thinking. Because humans are often ignored. No one looks at us as rivals. That means I can go places others avoid. You hide in the shadow of giants, Velora observed. Sometimes shadows are safer than thrones, Daniel replied. Her lips curved faintly, though it was not quite a smile. He spoke with plain words, but they carried weight. She wondered if perhaps humans were underestimated too easily. Hours passed. The ship's hum became a steady rhythm, almost calming. But Velora's instincts, sharpened by years of war, stirred uneasily. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Someone follows us. Daniel blinked. You can sense that? Drakiri warriors are trained to feel the weight of pursuit. Even in silence, even across stars. Look behind us. Daniel tapped the controls, pulling up the scanners. At first, nothing appeared. Then a faint signal flickered at the edge of the screen. A ship hidden and trailing just far enough to avoid notice. Daniel's jaw tightened. You're right. They've been shadowing us since we left the auction. Velora's claws tapped against the armrest. Not surprising. Many nobles would rather see me destroyed than risk my survival. They send hunters instead of hands. Daniel set his course to the side, trying to shake them, but the shadow ship adjusted its path. Whoever they were, they would not let go easily. Are you armed? Velora asked. Some defense cannons, Daniel admitted. Enough to scare off pirates. Not enough for serious hunters. Velora stood and walked to the weapons console, her fingers brushing over the screens. She understood the systems quickly, even though they were human-made. Show me. Daniel raised a brow. You want to fight? I was born to fight, she said simply. But I will not waste shots until I know their intent. Let them come closer. The shadow ship grew bolder as time passed, closing the distance. Soon its outline appeared, sleek, angular, painted black to blend with the void. It carried the mark of House Verath, one of the noble families who had laughed the loudest at the auction. Velora's eyes hardened. Verath, they would not risk this openly. They send assassins in quiet ships, hoping none will know. Daniel adjusted the controls, keeping his voice calm. We can't outrun them forever. Then we fight, she said. The shadow ship fired first. Bolts of red energy streaked across the void, slamming into Daniel's shields. The vessel shook, alarms flashing across the control panels. Daniel gritted his teeth. Shields holding for now. Velora's hands flew across the weapons console. She aimed the cannons and returned fire. Blue blasts shot from Daniel's ship, striking the enemy's side. Sparks burst across their hull, but the hunters did not retreat. The battle raged in the emptiness. Daniel's hands guided the ship with sharp precision, dodging blasts and weaving between shots. Velora's aim was fierce, each strike timed with perfect instinct. For the first time, Daniel saw her true strength, not as a prisoner or a princess, but as a warrior. Her eyes burned with focus, her movements graceful and deadly, yet the hunters pressed harder. Their ship was larger, their weapons stronger. Piece by piece, Daniel's shields weakened. The console flashed warnings. We can't keep trading shots, Daniel muttered. Velora's mind raced. Then she pointed to a cluster of asteroids ahead. There, fly into the field. Daniel glanced at her. That's suicide. Not if you trust me, she replied. He hesitated only for a breath. Then he pulled the ship sharply toward the asteroids. Rocks the size of cities spun slowly, their surfaces jagged and glowing with traces of ice. Daniel steered between them, engines roaring as the hunters followed. The enemy ship fired, blasts smashing against stone and scattering shards of debris. Velora's voice was calm, guiding him. Left, now rise. Drop speed, now roll. He followed without question. Somehow her instincts cut through the chaos. Together they slipped between asteroids, dodging both rock and fire. The hunters struggled to match their path, scraping their hull against stone. Now, Velora shouted. Daniel spun the ship hard around one massive asteroid. As the hunters followed, Velora fired all cannons at once. The shot struck a cluster of unstable rocks. The explosion sent debris crashing into the enemy ship. Tearing through its hull, a flash lit the field as the hunter's vessel broke apart, consumed by fire and silence. Daniel exhaled, his grip loosening on the controls. That was close. Velora leaned back, her chest rising steadily. Her face remained calm, but her eyes glowed faintly with triumph. You trusted me. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. You didn't give me much of a choice. Perhaps not, she admitted. But you made the right one. Silence returned to the ship. The stars outside spun slowly as they cleared the asteroid field. Daniel reset the course, his mind replaying the battle. He turned to Velora. They'll send more. That won't be the last, I know, she said quietly. As long as I live, they will hunt. That is why they call it a curse. Daniel's eyes met hers. It's not a curse. It's fear. They're afraid of you. Afraid of what you represent. Her gaze softened, though only slightly. And you are not? Daniel shook his head. No, I'm not. For the first time since her capture, Velora allowed herself a faint smile. It was small, fleeting, but real. Then perhaps the curse has already been broken. The ship continued forward into the unknown. Two souls, bound by chance and choice, now carried a fragile alliance. The nobles had mocked. The hunters had failed. And somewhere in the shadows of the empire, whispers had already begun, of a human who dared, and a warrior princess who fought beside him. The ship drifted out of hyperspace, stars snapping back into sharp points. Daniel adjusted the controls, scanning the space around them. Ahead, a quiet planet floated against the dark, its surface covered in forests and oceans. No grand cities sparkled across its surface, no trade lanes circled its skies. It was silent, almost forgotten. Valora leaned forward in the co-pilot seat, her golden eyes narrowing. "What world is this?" Daniel checked the readings. It doesn't have an official name in the charts. Some call it Haven 7. It's off the main routes. Not many come here. That makes it safe for now. Her gaze softened slightly. "You know how to vanish. Interesting for someone whose kind is considered weak." Daniel gave a small smile. "Weak species survive by being careful. We can't fight like the Drakiri. We can't command fleets like the nobles. But we know how to hide where no one bothers to look." The ship entered the planet's atmosphere, clouds parting to reveal wide green forests and mountains capped with white snow. Lakes shimmered like mirrors. To Valora, it was strange to see such peace. Her own homeworld had been burned in war, its skies filled with fire and ash. This place felt untouched. They landed in a clearing near a river. As the ramp lowered, cool air rushed inside, carrying the smell of pine and fresh water. Valora stepped down slowly, her boots pressing against soft grass. For a moment, she simply stood still, breathing deeply. "It is calm," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "That's why I chose it. I've used it as a rest point before. No sensors, no patrols, just quiet." He moved toward the river, checking the area for signs of danger. Valora followed, her sharp eyes scanning the trees. Though the world seemed peaceful, she never fully let down her guard. Later, they sat near the riverbank. The sun dipped low, painting the water with orange light. Daniel started a small fire using simple tools while Valora watched. She tilted her head, amused. "You light fire with sticks like ancient tribes?" she asked. Daniel chuckled. "Technology breaks. Fire always works." She studied him closely. His hands were steady, his movements efficient. He was not a great warrior or noble, but everything he did carried quiet purpose. At last, Valora spoke again. "You risked your life for me at the auction. You risked it again against the hunters. Why? I am no treasure for you. I am a danger." Daniel looked into the fire, thinking carefully before answering. "Because I couldn't stand to watch them laugh at you. No one should be left alone like that." Her chest tightened at his words. She remembered the silence in the hall, the mockery of the nobles, the feeling of rejection burning her pride, and then his hand raised against all of them. "You speak of honor," she said, "yet humans are said to chase profit above all." He met her gaze calmly. "Maybe some do, but I don't." For the first time, Valora did not know how to reply. As night fell, stars filled the sky above the forest. Valora sat with her back against a tree, her eyes watching the heavens. Daniel sat nearby, quietly checking his ship's scanners. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "Do you know what they call me? The cursed princess. They believe anyone who claims me will fall to ruin. My people believed it too after so many defeats. But the truth is..." She hesitated, her claws curling slightly. "The truth is that I failed them. I was meant to protect my throne, my people, my world. Instead, I watched everything burn. The curse is not in my blood. It is in my failure." Daniel set down his device and turned toward her. His voice was steady, not pitying. "That's not a curse. That's grief. Every warrior loses sometimes. What matters is what you do after." Her golden eyes flicked toward him, surprised at his words. In the Empire, no one had spoken to her like this. To others, she was either feared or mocked. But this human. He spoke as if she were only a person. "You think I can still rise?" she asked quietly. Daniel nodded. "I wouldn't have raised my hand if I didn't." For a long moment she was silent. Then, slowly, she allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The next day, Daniel worked on minor repairs to the ship while Valora explored the forest. She moved with the grace of a predator, her senses sharp, her body strong. Birds scattered at her presence, and small creatures darted into the undergrowth. At the edge of the forest, she found a cliff overlooking the valley below. The wind brushed her hair back as she gazed out. For the first time in years, she felt something close to peace. But her peace did not last. Her sharp eyes caught a flicker in the sky, movement too fast, too deliberate. She narrowed her gaze. Ships. She turned and ran back toward Daniel, her voice firm. "We are not alone." Daniel looked up from his work, his jaw tightening. He rushed inside the ship and pulled up the scanners. The readings flashed red. Several vessels had entered orbit, their signals coded but clear. "Noble hunters," Daniel muttered. "They tracked us faster than I thought." Valora stepped beside him, her presence steady. "Then we fight again," but Daniel shook his head. "Not this time. Too many ships. We can't win a battle here." Her eyes narrowed. "You would run?" "I would survive," he replied firmly. "Sometimes survival is smarter than victory." She stared at him, then slowly nodded. He was right. She had fought battles where pride blinded her to strategy. Perhaps this was why her people had fallen. Within minutes, the ship lifted from the clearing, trees bending under its engines. Daniel steered it sharply toward the upper atmosphere. The scanner screamed as enemy signals drew closer. Valora strapped herself into the co-pilot seat, her hands ready on the weapons console. "They will not stop chasing. They will hunt us until the end." Daniel's hands moved quickly over the controls. "Then we'll stay one step ahead. They underestimate humans. Let's use that." The ship roared into the skies, breaking through clouds and rushing toward the stars. Enemy hunters followed, their weapons glowing as they prepared to fire. Valora's golden eyes glowed with fierce determination. "Let them come." Daniel's voice was calm, steady. "Together, we'll find a way." And as the ship cut into the black void once more, hunted by powerful enemies, neither of them looked away. For in that moment they were no longer prisoner and rescuer. They were allies. The ship shuddered as it climbed higher into the black sea of space. Enemy signals flashed across the scanner, sharp red dots circling like predators around prey. Princess Valora sat beside Daniel, her golden eyes fierce, her hands ready at the weapons console. "They've boxed us in," she said. 4 ships above, 2 below. We cannot outrun all of them." Daniel adjusted the controls, his jaw tight. Maybe not outrun, but maybe outthink. The hunters closed in, their sleek black ships glowing faintly in the starlight. Weapons powered, ready to strike. Across the comms, a distorted voice filled the cabin. "Human," it sneered. "Surrender the cursed princess. You cannot protect her. No one can." Valora leaned forward, her voice sharp as steel. "Tell your master that the Drakiri princess bows to no house and no coward's fleet." The voice laughed. "Then you both will die." The comm went silent. The hunters tightened their circle. Daniel's fingers flew across the controls. "Hold steady." Valora glanced at him. "Do you have a plan?" His eyes flicked toward her. "Half a plan." "Half?" she asked, arching a brow. He gave a small, almost reckless smile. "Sometimes half is enough." The hunters fired. Bright bolts of energy streaked through the void, shaking Daniel's ship. Shields flared and groaned. Warning lights flashed across the console. Valora's hands moved with deadly precision, firing back. Blue bolts of light smashed into the hunters' shields, but their numbers pressed hard. Daniel pulled the ship into a steep dive, weaving between blasts. The hunters followed, their formation tight. He steered toward the debris of an ancient battle, broken ships drifting like bones in the void. Valora's eyes widened. "A graveyard." "Exactly," Daniel said. The wreckage loomed larger, twisted hulls and shattered engines floating silently. Daniel drove the ship into the maze, weaving between massive ruins. The hunters followed, their shots lighting up the ancient wrecks. "Too dangerous," Valora warned. "One wrong turn." Daniel cut her off calmly. "Trust me." Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Inside the graveyard, the hunters struggled to keep formation. Their larger ships clipped against wrecks, scraping armor while Daniel's smaller vessel darted through narrow gaps. Valora's shot struck at just the right moments, sending debris crashing into their pursuers. One hunter ship exploded as it struck a floating engine, flames spreading like a flower of fire. Another was crippled when Valora's blast shattered its wing. But the hunters were not finished. More pressed closer, their fire hammering Daniel's shields. Sparks burst from the panels, alarms blaring. "We can't take much more," Daniel muttered. Velora's claws dug into the console. Her voice was calm, but fierce. Then we strike now. Give me the angle. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He spun the ship sharply, dodging wreckage and pulling them behind a massive broken cruiser. As the hunters followed, Velora unleashed a storm of fire. Blue bolts ripped through their formation, tearing apart another ship in a brilliant explosion. The graveyard lit with flame, pieces of wreckage spinning into the dark. But the leader of the hunters remained. A massive black vessel loomed behind, its weapons glowing brighter than the rest. It fired a barrage that rocked Daniel's ship, nearly tearing through the last of the shields. Daniel gritted his teeth. We can't take that thing head on. Velora stood, her tall form casting a shadow in the dim cabin. Her eyes burned with golden fire. Then we fight not with power but with will. Together. She placed her hand firmly on his shoulder. The weight of it was strong, commanding, but steady. For the first time, Daniel felt not like her rescuer, but her equal. He nodded. Together. The leadership bore down on them. Daniel pulled hard on the controls, steering straight toward a massive shattered battleship floating in the graveyard. Its broken engines glowed faintly with unstable energy. Velora's eyes widened in sudden understanding. You mean to use the wreck? Daniel's voice was steady. Half a plan, remember? The hunters fired again. Daniel dove low, weaving between twisted steel. The wreck's engines loomed closer, glowing like sleeping fire. At the perfect moment, Velora unleashed the cannons. Her shot struck the unstable core of the ruined battleship. For a breath of silence, nothing happened. Then, the wreck exploded in a blinding wave of fire, tearing through the void. The shockwave slammed into the leadership, ripping it apart piece by piece. Its black hull cracked, flames bursting across it until it split in two and vanished into silence. The scanners cleared. The hunters were gone. Silence filled the cabin. Daniel leaned back in his chair, breathing hard. His ship shook but held together. Velora stood tall, her golden eyes glowing brighter than the stars. We did it, Daniel said quietly. Velora turned toward him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then slowly she placed her clawed hand against his arm. No, she said. You did it. You, human. You dared when no one else would. You broke the curse they feared. Daniel looked at her, his voice calm. I didn't break it. You did. You were never cursed. They just wanted you to believe it. For a long moment her gaze held his. Then, for the first time since her throne had fallen, she smiled. It was small, but it was real. Days later, the ship drifted in safe space, far from hunters and nobles. They rested in the quiet, the hum of the engines the only sound. Velora sat in the co-pilot seat, her posture still regal, but her eyes softer now. Tell me, Daniel Hayes of Earth, what will you do now that you have me in your care? Daniel thought for a moment, then shrugged lightly. I don't know. Maybe see where the stars take us. Maybe remind the galaxy that humans aren't as weak as they think. And what of me? She asked. He met her golden gaze. That's for you to decide. You're not a prize. You're a person. Go where you want. Fight for what you believe. I'll stand with you if you'll have me. Her chest tightened at his words. In all her battles, all her trials, no one had spoken to her like that. Not as a princess, not as a warrior, just as herself. She nodded slowly. Then together we walk forward. Not cursed, not broken, but free. Daniel extended his hand. She looked at it for a long moment, remembering the hall, the laughter, the moment he had raised it against all odds. Then, slowly, she took it. And in that small gesture, a new story began. The nobles of the Thousand Suns would whisper for years of the cursed warrior princess and the single human who dared to raise his hand. Some would laugh, some would fear, but all would remember. Because sometimes in the heart of the galaxy it only takes one hand raised to change everything.